to order the regular meeting of the Lowell Area Schools Board of Education, Monday, April 10th at 7:02 p.m. Please stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Sonia, addition or changes to the agenda?
None.
Public comments on agenda items?
None tonight.
First order of business is our student council report. Emma, love for you to give us an update.
Thank you. Okay, so this week is our first week back from spring break, and a lot of the underclassmen have a lot of MME testing this week, and seniors have some meetings. And the mental health assembly that Sophia talked about last week is moved to next week, April 18th. Our March blood drive went great, and our donor goals were exceeded. Spring sports have started and are doing great, and we hope that those continue throughout the season. And on April 25th, we are having an OK White Athlete Mental Health Conference with a student panel with students from all schools in the OK White Conference. Thank you.
Thank you. Next order of business is a report. It's the Michigan Integrated Continuous Improvement Process.
That's me. I'm in. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm excited to kind of present some information on what's known as MyKIP. That's terminology that you've heard before. So some of this was a little bit review and some of it is new, and for those of you in the audience, all of it may be new. But really, what's exciting about the school improvement process these days is, and this is a shift from sort of pre-COVID times, is it's really a reflection of the work that we're doing during the day. And so it doesn't feel like we're sort of jumping through hoops or crossing off T's and dotting I's for compliance reasons. This is really reflective of the educational work that we're doing. It takes all kinds of people in a large school system who have a lot of different jobs and responsibilities, but in terms of teaching and learning, our school improvement process, this MyKIP process, is our focus and continues to be our focus. So a couple of these points I've mentioned years ago, this school improvement process was known as ASSIST and has now shifted to MyKIP. In the past, each building was responsible for developing their own school improvement plan, and each building submitted those, and the district then compiled the district school improvement plan off what the buildings are doing. It's a bit of a shift now because really there's one district plan, which is a pre-K-12 plan with collaboration from the district. This MyKIP process hopes to ensure equitable opportunities, environments, and supports resulting in students that are healthy, safe, engaged, challenged, and supported. We'll come back to that. Academics clearly is the priority, and learning at high levels clearly remains our priority. The MyKIP process really seeks to develop the whole child approach, including not only academic learning as we traditionally think about it, but also mental health, as was just mentioned by Emma, and other pieces of behavior plans, etc. So MyKIP is a continuous process of improvement. It really informs the way we work on a daily basis, rather than being an annual event to complete. We've talked about our focus on professional learning communities, or PLC work. You've heard me talk about that. We continue to engage in that work. We continue to communicate about what it means to operate as a PLC. Again, these are the three big ideas. Primarily a focus on learning, as I just mentioned. Engaged in collective inquiry, that's through collaboration, through our PLT teams. So as you remember, this year we've shifted our professional development for adults, where we have regular and consistent PLT times with our teams, departments, grade levels, And so buildings are using that in a variety of ways. But that adult learning time, working together, looking at the needs, looking at assessment results, looking at standards, has become ingrained in what we do as a district, not only in one building, but again, at a pre-K-12 level, which is exciting. And we remain data-driven and focus on results. So there's no shortage of data, as you know, that's available. And so we continue to look at all different types of data to help inform our decisions. Here's something else, other verbiage that you've heard talk about, but I'm going through this to illustrate what our big picture looks like in terms of our learning work. MTSS, or multi-tiered system of support. So when you look at the MyKIP platform and how goals are arranged through school improvement these days, the encouragement is to really focus more on a system-wide goal for improvement and then plug in specific academic actions or strategies under that larger goal. So really, Lowell Area Schools is continuing the implementation of an MTSS approach. That's not new. That's been a work in progress for several years. To learning in order to develop tiered systems of support for behavior, academics, and the social emotional development of all students. What we really focus on, and what we continue to focus on, especially sort of post-COVID, is this Tier 1 level, which affects all students. So what is best practice in each of these mentioned areas for Tier 1 that all students have an opportunity to be exposed to? It's been said, and I like this, and it's been shared with me, so I didn't invent this, but you can't intervene your way out of a Tier 1 problem. And that really resonated with me, because really at the base, you start with the foundation of what is our best practice for behavior, for social emotional learning, and for academics. But we know some students will need to be identified and will need additional support, and that's where Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions come into place. Roughly 15% of our students, regardless of the area, will need some additional support, and then a smaller number, approximately 5%, will need even more intensive intervention to succeed. So once again, PLC working with an MTSS approach. So this is a visual that was actually created last year and shared with staff, and it's been shared periodically. But really, it's just a way to describe what I've just been referring to. So at the very top, you see the board mission statement that we have within our policies. In the spirit of high expectations, we ensure that all students will master essential skills, empowering them to become lifelong learners, contributors, and responsible members of our global community. So that comes from the school board. Underneath that, we have a PLC approach, and then that goes into our MTSS systems. We have what we call buckets of learning, which are student behavior, academics, and social emotional learning. And some of those descriptors underneath those buckets of learning describe at least some of the breakout topics within each area. For example, when we focus on behavior, you've heard us talk about our PBIS systems before. You've heard us talk about the fact that each building has its own matrix to develop that common language and expectations. And we also are a promoter of restorative practices when it comes to behavior. We want kids and all stakeholders to own their behavior, to learn from their behavior. So when we look at academics, each building has a child study process. We break down into the 4 core area subjects, and then a number of our teachers and courses are non-core as well. And then we have social emotional learning. We're promoting positive mental health. Again, our PBIS systems and building matrix or matrices are a part of that. What is our desired outcome with this MTSS approach? We want to identify Tier 1 universal supports for each focus area, and then create Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. So that's a good way visually to express the work. And again, with this MyKIP system, it allows us to just be flexible and do the work that we are doing and look at it from a whole child perspective. So, math proficiency, you know we've been working hard on that. That has been an established area. Through COVID, we looked at data. The gaps in terms of learning loss for math were more significant at that time for reading. We started with math. There's a number of things that you've heard of on this list that we've already engaged on, but the point with this particular slide is these are things that we have been doing already. These are not yet to come. These are things that have been happening. So we've had K-5 and K-12 math vertical teams doing work. We've heard from, and I see Carmen's in the crowd tonight, we've heard from our elementary math coordinator. We have parapros working in 6-8 math intervention. We've had K-12 representatives attending training for math called MISHME, which focuses on best practice based on the standards. We've talked a lot about the new math curriculum for Reveal for the K-5 that we just approved in March. We've had a partnership with GVSU and offered tutoring, math-specific tutoring, both at the high school and the middle school. And we've developed through this K-12 math vertical team an articulated vision document for Tier 1 learning that I'm going to come to in just a second. And we've worked with math consultants through the ISD. So these are things we've already been doing in regards to math improvement. So this is the articulated vision document, and it's really a draft document. I did make a copy of this because I understand it's a little hard to see. Our K-12 team is going to come back to this in August before school starts and revisit this document. Mr. Goff, Mr. Pappas, Carmen Tawney is a part of that team. The idea with this articulated vision is that we want to, if you're a middle school or high school math teacher or an elementary teacher who teaches math, we want to offer a common vision for best practice from a Tier 1 perspective on what we believe in terms of math instruction. So Mrs. Ayala from the high school, who's the department chair, has been a member of this team. Mrs. Breen from the middle school, who's the department chair at the middle school, has been a part of this team. The administrators and other elementary teachers. So I'm not going to go through this whole document at this point. I just wanted to point out that this has been a product of that K-12 team's vertical work, and we're excited about that. This instruction piece in the middle, if you look at that when you have more time, those are general beliefs. So whether you're teaching kindergartners or whether you're teaching Algebra 1, you know, we believe that we need to accept that all students can learn math at high levels. We believe in engaging students in productive struggle and the value of what productive struggle means, and so on. I'm not going to go through them all now. We're going to come back in August with this work and develop further description for the staff to say, if you teach math at Lowell area schools, these are the things we believe from a research-based best practice point of view. So it may not look like much, it may just look like a one-page document, but a lot of time and effort and thought went into this articulated vision for math. So what's coming next? We've talked a lot about math. Well, we're pretty invested in literacy as well, right? And so we're looking to add some reading strategies based on what's known as the science of reading. We've already begun the process of having teams define essential standards. Our goal would be really eventually, not overnight, but eventually to develop an articulated vision similar to what you just saw for math, but for reading over time. We're incorporating the current district resources that we have, which at the elementary level focus on the units of study and Lucy Calkins. Looks a little different at the middle school and high school. And again, it's about that Tier 1 best practice. We have K-5 literacy coaching and intervention that's already occurring. We have some upcoming training. We've had additional training throughout the year with our instructional coach, really to provide that consistency on what does the research show what does the science of reading show about best practice, and are we doing that consistently? And so we're interested in looking at the role of secondary instruction and where does that fit in terms of reading. You know, there's a presumption that by the time kids hit middle school and high school, they're already proficient readers. And many of our readers, if not most of them, in fact are. But there are some that are not. So from a tier 2, tier 3 perspective, what do we do for those kids at a secondary level? We will create a K-12 reading vertical team in the same way that we created a K-12 math vertical team, and we will consult with the ISD for reading. We're also looking to add a behavior-based goal. In order to do that, K-12, we're going to look at available data through SWIS and Infinite Campus. We talked last time about the ISD Student Perception Survey that we're going to be doing again in May. We hope to glean some really useful information about student perception from that survey. We're going to engage in a review of our current PBIS systems. In fact, we have a meeting later this month with our building principals and our building PBIS coaches to begin that conversation. I mentioned restorative practices, and there are ISD consultants specifically involved in MTSS work. So that's coming, but that's not all been decided. Further collaboration and conversation is going to be needed to develop either a mental health-based or behavior-based goal. But that's one of our planks within that visual that you saw in those buckets of learning. And this is the last slide, and this really comes from the state in terms of this MyKIP plan. You'll see here with this graphic in the middle that the focus is on the whole community, the whole child, and the whole school. It starts at the top, looking at available data to assess needs. And so there's a lot of data that we're building into the MyKIP template. Planning based on a needs assessment, how to flesh out those strategies and action steps and look at our resources that are available. Working on implementation, and really what I showed you in regards to math is at an implementation or a beginning implementation phase right now. Monitoring that to look for evidence of success and say what is the data showing us, what are our scores, et cetera, both locally and on state assessments. And then evaluating what we're doing and making changes and looking at consistent revisions. It's an ongoing document. It's a living, breathing document as opposed to something that's written in stone that you don't revisit. And again, other than, oh, we've got to turn something in. So there's really nothing anymore with school improvement that we have to turn into the state. We use the designated MyKIP platform to craft the work that we're already engaged in. And there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more things that we do work on and that we are successful in and that we're proud of. But this is a 20-minute or 15-minute version of kind of the big picture of what school improvement looks like. So, with that said, I don't know if you have questions or comments or wonderings, but my attempt was to provide at least an overview.
I have a question. As a newbie, what is a vertical team?
So it's a team where we involve elementary teachers with secondary teachers on the same team. So those are known as vertical teams. Horizontal teams would be teams that are all teaching the same course or within the same grade level. Yeah. So that perspective and that transition of what do we deal with and work on as an elementary teacher versus, you know, what the high school teachers are working on around the same subject area. And it only helps us to increase that communication and, for example, have high school teachers better understand what those essential standards are coming out of 8th grade, and for our 6th grade teachers to better understand what essential standards are coming out of 5th grade. So creating those intentional opportunities is part of the PLC process.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else?
And when you're assessing the students' needs, are you taking input from the parents as well
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways that we get input from parents. You know, each building has a version of receiving parent input and different ways of doing that. Mr. Fowler, of course, has his monthly parent advisory group that he meets with, and they talk about not only these kinds of issues, but other issues as well. And so, you know, there's different systems in place, but that's a valuable component, hearing from parents. And I'm always happy to meet with parents, have a cup of coffee, talk on the phone, any of those kinds of things.
Kind of getting into their actual son or daughter. I mean, there are issues that they may have, just thinking of it, you know, from the personal perspective that I went through when the kids were younger, having that.
Yeah.
My son was average, but it took a lot for him to be average. So his grade doesn't necessarily show up as a you know, he was a C reader, but he struggled to be a C reader. And if it wasn't for the interaction with the principal and the teachers, he may have just continued to be a struggling C reader.
Well, some of us, including members of our literacy team and others, recently watched a screening of the documentary, The Truth About Reading. Is that what it's called? Did I say that right? And I would encourage anybody to Google that particular film, The Truth About Reading, and just look at the reality of literacy across our country. There's many successful people in the world that you would never know are functionally illiterate because they've developed other coping skills. And we have people who are sort of fake readers for chunks of their life. And the exciting thing through the science of reading is, you know, we have the research to really know what works based on phonics and phonological awareness. It's not an easy thing to say. Versus other practices that people maybe have been doing over the years that they thought were working, but maybe weren't as successful. So all of these tier 1 things we're working to unearth and to say, if we have something that works and this is the research, then we need to do that consistently and across the board. And our kindergarten teachers, for example, our first grade teachers, don't need to do everything exactly alike all the time, but we need to have the commonality. I was going to mention it later, but Kendra Lee, who's our instructional coach, along with our literacy coordinators, Mrs. Burnett, we're going to have some training coming up where we bring together the leads, those PLT leads that I was talking about, the learning community work, and really go over those essential standards and talk about what are non-negotiables as a kindergarten teacher, as a first grade teacher, as a second grade teacher in those formative years. Because there's kids that come from very good families and have success in other areas that struggle to read. And we have a lot of great readers too, don't get me wrong. But we want all of them to be good to great readers, right? That's our task, not just some. So, thank you.
One thing that I'd add to that conversation is a frustration that I had was that in Michigan's traditional school improvement system, and then as we started talking about multi-tiered systems of support, I always felt like we were operating on separate planes, kind of working in the same direction, but it was a frustration for me that just couldn't get those things. And really through the MyKIP process, we see how our MTSS program supports the overall systems with that and the overall improvement too. So the tool has been helpful in that regards to just get everything working on the same page and on the same plane now as well.
Yeah, I would say before there were programs for the high learner, the exceptional, and those that were really struggling, but the people in the middle were just, I don't want to say going through the motions, but there wasn't an assessment, and it looks like now that it's the entire.
Yeah, learning communities ask the question, what do we do for kids that are struggling? But then the next question is, what do we do for advanced kids?
Yeah.
What do we do for kids that already know the material? Because we got a lot of those too. And it's hard if not impossible for individual teachers to solve that on a day-to-day basis. Where we have better luck is if we can work within systems and within teams to better address it.
And you're also not sacrificing little kids either.
Anything else from Mr. Vanderman? All right, our next order of business is our consent grouping. This is the approval of the meeting minutes, closed session, work session, expense payment, budget update, and our superintendent's contract. Could I get a motion to bring this consent grouping over?
So moved.
Motion by Lori, could I get support?
Support.
Support by Jennifer. Open discussion. I wanted to comment on the contract. As we've been going through the contract for over 2 months now, the goal that we all brought forward was to bring the superintendent's contract as close to the midpoint as we could across the county and to improve the longevity of that contract. With the contract that is in the consent grouping, the superintendent will receive a 5% increase over a 5-year period with an evergreen contract at the end. That will bring Mr. Fowler to 13 out of 21, or there'll be 13 superintendents out of 21 that will be ahead of Mr. Fowler in both the contract and in the annuity. So we got him closer to that midpoint, but not all the way to that midpoint. We've also, in order to address the longevity, we added another bump in years 4 and 5 as we discussed, which will again bring Mr. Fowler closer to that midpoint in that year 4 and 5 before the evergreen contract starts renewing in year 6. I'd like to thank Mr. Chahaki for all of the research that he pulled together for the county, from all the county superintendents, additional information regarding the regional contracts. And I'd also like to thank all the board members. You have reviewed the contract multiple times over the course of the last 2 months up until the last couple of weeks over spring break as well as we finalize that. So I'd like to thank you for that. Any other elements that you'd like to discuss regarding consent grouping? Hearing none, all those in favor of the consent grouping, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Next order of business is the discussion, as a discussion item, it is the first reading of the revised new bylaws and policies.
Yeah, so these are the policies that were introduced at the March workshop. Was able to share in the update the administrative guideline that I mentioned regarding the student discipline related use of tobacco. So as I mentioned before, that's not part of this policy update, but it is part of just the conversation that we're having about our response to tobacco use among students and how we respond to that as a discipline matter, but also as a matter of education and support, addressing tobacco use among our students. The other policies, they're spelled out in the summary. If there's any questions about those, we will again have a second reading and vote on them at the regular May meetings. So between now and then, please let me know if there's any questions or concerns. If there's any other comments or questions tonight.
I think it's just important, we talked about at the workshop, some people were here, but not everyone that, our policy updates many times are, again, just updates of things that need to be, tobacco has different names and different tools and things that you get your smoking through these days. And so really it's more of a change in verbiage than anything else in those policies. We have the same, we've had tobacco policies and we have very similar tobacco policies that we're suggesting now, but updated for all sorts of modern ways to do that. Changing some of the things with assessment. The state is constantly changing its assessment language, its assessment rules. Our policies then have to be updated every time the state does things. And so I think it's just important to realize that for most of the work that we have, when we hear these policy things, that it's policies that are not new to us or not anything too earth-shattering, but really just keeping us on top of what's going on with state and national legislation and just what's going on with the way things work in society these days.
Thank you. Next order of business is our information section. Our first information is human resource update. Mr. Shahaki, would you please provide us an
Yeah,
update?
thanks. Outside of hiring, which I talked about last time, and the superintendent's contract, the biggest thing we're working on is a drivers association contract, trying to wrap that up. That's the only contract we have this school year. So with the goals of recruiting, retainment, incentive for years, we have many drivers who've been with the district for a long time. And then also with all the other units that we bargain with, trying to near that middle of the county average, kind of been what we've been shooting for. And by doing that, we'll be able to recruit and also keep, help all areas of transportation. On top of that, last time I mentioned, now that the calendar's out, we're focusing on PD for next year. I work with Dan from a curriculum standpoint, but there's still support staff PD that has to be laid out. What we just locked in for August was school safety for admin assistants. Right there through the vestibules, we're the first people who are responding to individuals coming in and out each day. Whether that's students, parents, or whoever it may be, sales reps, and so forth. Just learning how to cover that and make sure the school is as safe as possible at all times. As we got, in addition to the PD that we're trying to develop for next year, as we wind down, we have to start making sure evaluations are ready to go. Support staff evaluations, teacher evaluations, driver, everybody. Finishing off and focusing on strengths or any areas that we need improvement for all workers of Lowell. And then lastly, admin PD for June. We always finish off the year when students are gone. I'm getting the administration team together, focusing on data pieces, needs, wants. The evaluation system we use is called iObservation. Well, it seems like we've had it for a while. We're only wrapping up year 5. So there's still areas that we always touch upon to make sure that we're, whether we're rating the same or what an effective is for one versus the highly effective. So we're going back and kind of doing our own internal audit. And then also any newer administrators are then taking on training to further develop using the system in different areas. So that's kind of in a nutshell where I'm at right now. And that's on top of the hiring piece. Talked about that last time, but we're getting as many job postings out as possible, trying to get the best candidates, and I'll continue to be doing that, through June into the summer. But wrapping up the contracts, making sure that teacher contracts are out by June, and then also reasonable assurance letters as well, so our staff know that they have a job to come back to next year. So those are the important pieces right now in my world. Any questions on any of those?
Yeah, Justin,
Yeah.
as far as the teacher and administration evaluations, are we anticipating a change in those coming down the pike?
I don't, the actual system we use, the platform, or percentages?
Well, I mean, whatever, I have heard we're going to have changes. What are
Yeah.
those?
So I don't have the exact changes in percentages at this point. We're finishing off the year status quo like we always have. As far as the platform though, the platform meets all the needs for the state. So even if there are changes in the scoring and what percentage is used for instructional practice versus data, that'll come later on. But right now it'll be the same platform.
At the legislative level, is that where you're asking?
Well, yeah,
about?
because I know that there was something along the lines of, paying for the percentage of students, performance, how much that figures into a teacher's evaluation and stuff, so.
Yeah, so currently it's 40% of the teacher and the evaluations are based off of state data and state tests in grade levels where there is none. And then there's other measures for that. And so the talk is to reduce that number to more, the tool and the observations and the conversations that we're having in the district, as well as the system of highly effective, minimally effective, and effective, some modifications to that system as well. So, our hope is that through that process that it becomes less about that score and more about meaningful feedback and having a system that gives us the tools to provide opportunities for reflection and meaningful feedback for staff as part of that continuous improvement process.
And the buckets have changed, through the years. It used to be 75% instructional, 25% data. And like Nate said, it's 60-40 right now. Within that 40% of data breaks down to 20% local and 20% state. And then your data pieces fall into that, as well as what we call SLO goals, or student learning objectives, where a classroom teacher has the ability to take a look at what they're teaching and student scoring, and then develop a new SMART goal on how they would like a class to move forward, or a percentage increase in a specific area. So the data piece can get pretty confusing. And then the scoring piece, I haven't seen the finalization of that, but reducing the amount of potential overall categories that you can fall under is what I last heard. So, any other questions?
Thank you. Next order of business is our budget update. Ms. Hodge.
Okay, I don't have all of that tonight. We're working through calculating salaries for next year so that we can get our budget amendment ready for June. And then also looking at numbers for next school year. Our audit starts next month for this school year, so I'm gearing up for that as well. They'll be out in May and in July. So start the work now and wrap it up at the end of July. So just trying to keep everything on track and right now the school year in our office.
Any questions? Hearing none, next order of business is our curriculum update. Mr. Vanderbilt.
Well, I feel like we've had a robust curriculum update tonight. So suffice to say, it is assessment season now that we're after spring break, and we have lots of anxious students ready to take the tests. We have the SAT and the SAT suite at the high school, and our PSAT for the 8th graders on Wednesday, I believe, and we have MSTEP tests throughout the month of April and May, and we have app testing at the elementary levels. So there's a lot of assessing that starts to go on really from now pretty much up to about the end of May. So that's the only thing I was going to add to what you've already heard.
Thank you. Next order of business, public comments. Before we get to those public comments, I just want to remind everybody that we'll be speaking. There's a 3-minute limit on the public comments. Mr. Chahaki will raise his hand with 30 seconds to go, and then I will, when he lowers that hand, I will stop the person in their communication. I also want to remind everybody, again, please be respectful to our community members, our teachers, and our administration with your comments. I know that I appreciate everyone's respect that they have given. I just want to remind everyone, once again, that is something that we hold very personal and dear to us, to be respectful to. So with that,
Ready? Mark Landy.
Hi, my name is Mark Blandy. First of all, I want to say thank you to everybody on the other side of that table. I know from firsthand experience what a big commitment that is, so appreciate you being here. Second of all, I'd like to speak about the recent and continued attempts to remove books from our school libraries. It's my belief that this is part of a broader effort by some in our community to impose their views on others. This is part of what we refer to as the culture war. The Constitution of our country provides for legal, democratic methods to create the rules that we live by, but it also provides protections to prevent people from taking things too far. The First Amendment reads, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, of abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. I take this very seriously and believe that the attempted book bans are just a starting point for further erosion of our freedoms of speech. Focusing on sexual content is simply a way to get a foot in the door of controlling what information is available to our children and citizens. The next steps will be removing books that include LGBTQ subject matter, or books that are deemed to make white people feel bad about horrible things that happen to people of color or indigenous people in our country's history. We don't have to look far to see where this can lead. Recent book removals in Florida and Texas include books by mainstream authors Jodi Picoult, Judy Blume, James Patterson. Also included are the books Wicked, like the Broadway play, Outlander, like the TV show, The Diary of Anne Frank, really? The Handmaid's Tale, and a book of poems by Maya Angelou. In 2003, a school board in Arkansas restricted access to the Harry Potter books in a school library based on a single parent's objection to the book. The school board's reasoning was that the books encouraged disobedience and involved matters of witchcraft and the occult. The courts later found that this was in violation of the First Amendment. These are just a few examples. We don't need a culture war at our school board meetings. We need a culture of peace, a culture of respect, a culture of cooperation, a culture of free-flowing knowledge and ideas, a culture of education. Thank you.
Vincent, I'm not sure how to say your last name. Can you say your last name?
Mark. My name's Woody. Well, you're fine. You all right? Sorry about that. No worries. All good. Thank you. Well, to follow up that speech, this fiction is called Tilt. It's by Ellen Hopkins. It's in Lowell High School. Barcode T954527. I have identified no board policy distinguishing library books as non-instructional materials. So let's read a couple passages, shall we? I stripped off my panties, and he confirmed, "You're positive?" just as I pushed them inside of me. That leads me to deception, because that's the thing about parents. Mostly they don't want their kids to have fun, at least not when it involves underage drinking, illegal substances, or the possibility of sex. I can't say I'm going up with Dylan, so I invented a sleepover at Emily's. Emily comes out of the room adjusting clothes. Makeup's smeared. Ty's here? They've been going out for almost a year. Serious though. No, actually it's not Tyler, it's Clay. But I can't believe she'd cheat on Tyler. Did you and Ty have a fight or something? She smiles. Nothing like that. I just wanted to try something different, is all. So within the first 8 pages of this book has glorified underage sex, lying to parents, and cheating in relationships. And I haven't even read the graphic parts of this book yet. Per Board Policy 2414, Reproductive Health and Family Planning, instruction shall stress that abstinence from sex is the only protection 100% effective against unplanned pregnancy and sexually transmitted diseases, and that abstinence is a positive lifestyle for unmarried young people. I'll distract myself with a little medicinal green and a little porn of the guy and guy variety. You can get anything you want online. It's crazy, really. All you have to do is lie and say you're 18. Well, you need a credit card, but I borrowed one from Dad's when he passed out totally drunk. I managed to store numbers from one of the Visa cards on my computer. That's on page 17. So within the first 17 pages, this book has now glorified drug use and provided detailed instructions on viewing internet pornography by stealing from your parents. And I'm going to preempt any intersectionality grievances. I do not really care the orientation of this character. Porn is porn, and theft is theft, regardless of orientation. Per Board Policy 5530, Drug Prevention, as the educational institution of this community, the school should strive to prevent drug abuse and help drug abusers by educational rather than punitive means. These passages appear to support the reverse of your mission. And I haven't even read the graphic parts of this book yet. Per Book Review Policy 9130D1, the committee in evaluating the question material shall be guided by the following criteria. The appropriateness of material for the age and maturity level of the students with whom it is being used. It looks as though you will have to decide if the values and depictions promulgated by this book are appropriate for the youth of this community. Good day.
Senator Gray.
Okay, so I had the opportunity recently to participate at the high school career fair to share my experience working in a creative field. I met with about 50 to 60 students in my sessions, and all of them were attentive, courteous, and bright. As someone who loved art in school, I appreciate all the ways that our school district supports the arts. I was impressed with the Be Nice art contest and the amazing production of Matilda. Seriously, it took me months to get that soundtrack out of my head. I think it's great that every student in our district can potentially tap into their interests, whether it be athletics, science, robotics, agriculture, theater, music, or fine arts. And the same goes with our media center. We're incredibly fortunate to have a wide array of books that appeal to our students' diverse interests, and that every student can find representation in our school library. I'm not a fan of censorship. I think it's great that we have a system in place that allows each parent to decide which books are appropriate for their own children, and that's exactly as it should be. But for any one person to demand that a book be censored for the entire student body based on their personal opinion, to me is absurd and repressive. So as we enter the home stretch of the school year, I just want to thank our support staff, media specialists, teachers, administrators, and the school board members for all your hard work. Thank you.
Bobby, could you say your last name, please?
Yuri.
My name is Bobby Yuri, and I'm a resident of the city of Lowell. I wanted to come up here tonight and say thank you to the school board, the faculty, and the community. When my wife and I decided to relocate our family to the area back in 2016, we were looking for a small town that had character, had accommodations, and most importantly, had a great school system. Having an outstanding local light and power company, of course, was a bonus. Our son Tyler graduated from LHS in 2019, and our daughter Gabby will graduate this year. The Lowell school system has done a fantastic job preparing our child academically for adulthood. I choose those words carefully because I don't feel it's the school's responsibility to teach our children. Teaching a child is the responsibility of the parent, not the school board or the faculty. Einstein said, "I never teach my pupils, I only provide the conditions in which they learn," and I could not agree more. The job of the parent is to teach the child to be a respectful, productive, contributing member of society. It is the job of the school to offer a quality opportunity for learning. As our children go to adult and enter society, they will require skills beyond academics. Cultivating those skills is the responsibility of the parent, not the schools. It is the parent's responsibility to prepare the child to interpret events and arrive at their own conclusions, not the schools. It is the parent's responsibility to make sure their child knows right from wrong, not the schools. The school is responsible for establishing conditions for learning, as Einstein suggested. The parent is responsible for the fiber makeup of the child. These differences cannot be confused. Raising a child is a daunting task and must be taken seriously by the parent. Assigning parental responsibilities to others and then criticizing the fashion with those responsibilities are executed is neither mature nor beneficial to the child. Today's society offers many opportunities for school of choice or alternate learning environments outside of the public school system. If a parent is expecting more from the school system than conditions for learning, the parent must be very selective in their school of enrollment and embrace the freedom of choice. If the parent chooses to take their parent responsibilities seriously and trusts the school system to provide conditions for learning, there are few options better than Lowell Public Schools. Although still growing, my children were well prepared for the academic rigors of post-secondary education thanks to the great staff and environment here in Lowell. Both of my children who attended Lowell have made friends with the student body and faculty that will forever cherish. We would like to thank all the teachers and staff for everything you've done for our children. High school can be a difficult time for young adults, but Mr. Goff has always made sure our daughter felt safe and conveyed a sincere concern towards her well-being and opportunities. Mrs. Beecher always offered a quiet space away from the daily grind to rest and recharge. And finally, the unsung heroes of Everett High School, the cafeteria staff. Your caring interactions with our daughter are very much appreciated. My family cannot say thank you enough for everything you've done for us and the community. We will always be indebted, and we will always be in our prayers.
Stephanie Boone.
Nearly 2 years ago, I sat down with Nate, Dustin, and Dan, and I asked what they knew about DEI in Lowell schools. They told me that Lowell had a DEI team, but they didn't know much about it and gave very few details. I had a lot of questions that went unanswered, so I FOIA'd for more details. It turned out not only did Nate know quite a bit about the DEI team, but he was the director of the team prior to accepting his current position as superintendent. That was my first clue that something stunk in Lowell schools. Since that day, Lowell's DEI mission has been full steam ahead. We see it weaved into almost everything that goes on in our schools anymore, across all subjects, platforms, and curricula. Nearly 2 years ago, I also shared my concerns with Nate, Dan, and Dustin about the COVID ESSER rescue dollars, as well as other federal and state grants, because I worried that the money would come with strings attached to political agendas. You guys remember? You took the money anyway. I have sat through meeting after meeting, month after month for the past 2.5 years. I listened to reports showing drops in overall scores, drop in behavior, standards, mental health, drops in attendance, excuses. All I heard in these reports was lowering the standards, now not only for our students, but also our staff. Sad, sad, sad. Don't you see, even what was presented tonight with the MyKIP program, even though Dan didn't talk about it, it's DEI at its core. The board has a job. Go Google it. Look up the MyKIP program. It is riddled with DEI. It's everywhere. And you can change the acronym to whatever you want, LMNOPQ, whatever you want to call it, but it's the definition of insanity when we keep repeating these things over and over again and don't change. It feels like a hamster wheel that I know we all want to get off from. And when we keep trying the same things but giving it a different acronym, we're not going to get anywhere. I filled out the school of choice paperwork for my son this afternoon because he wants to go to school with his siblings. And what I focused on is friendships, peer groups, activities, belonging, caring teachers who see kids, not color, or rainbows, or money, learning together, growing together, safe books, safe spaces that welcome all red arrows. We can do this without the government getting in the way. We don't need to pay for these programs. We can do it ourselves. Take the lipstick off the pig and let's get down to business. Let's work together. As my friend today put it so well, he said, DEI was never about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is division, exclusion, and indoctrination. Stop excluding the ones who want to put a stop to this hamster wheel. We want to help if you will let us. Thank you.
Mike Lloyd.
Hello, my name is Mike Loix, and actually I have no kids directly in this school district, but I've been contacted by some folks that are concerned, and we've heard some of those concerns tonight. They're concerned about the access to inappropriate and adult content in the schools. Obviously, you've heard about some of these books over the course of the time, during board meetings and other methods. Obviously, a couple of them, example, All Boys Are Blue, Another one is the sun and her flower. Just a couple examples of that. You know, why is this? Couple questions. Is it appropriate or not? You know, at one point, actually, I was here in February, and there was some sort of a committee that decided that a book was okay or not. I don't know all the history there. I apologize for not knowing all that. But I have a couple of questions I wanted to bring up. I would like to have you refer to the Lowell's Student Code of Handbook that is available to everybody here, and I think the board, I'm assuming, approved this. Because in that, under general policy and philosophy, is a couple things of offenses. These are things that if the students do this, or anybody in your schools, creates an issue. And this is under Code of Conduct under offenses. Pornography, this is in your handbook. Any person possessing, taking, disseminating, or sharing nude, obscene, pornographic, lewd, or otherwise legal pictures or photographs will be punished under the Student Code of Conduct. It's forbidden behavior. It violates state and federal laws. So this is in your handbook. Some of the content, you may not agree with it, and I love this forum, we need this forum. This is in your handbook. I don't know if you know that. Sexual harassment of students. Under sexual harassment, item E, sexually suggestive objects, pictures, videotapes, audio recordings, or literature. So if someone has it on their person, so if they check a book out, they happen to grab one of these books off the shelf or from the teacher, does that not fit this requirement? Does that not concern you that you have potentially these books that someone chose to put into your system and they violate your own code of conduct? So I guess there's a choice here. There's some self-approving of somebody's making a choice about adult content, and yet it's also violating your code and potentially state law. The big question is, who is accountable? What's the discipline? Because if you read here, I see it's state and federal laws. State laws are being threatened in your old code of conduct. How are these inappropriate books being approved and placed in the schools at all? And in the end, the big question is, what's your plan to provide age-appropriate content in the Lowell school system?
Thank you all. Next order of business is our superintendent's report.
Yeah, thank you. Just first want to welcome everybody back from spring break. It was a tough day at LAS today, and especially at Alto Elementary. Today was the first day of school since we learned about the death of Alto first grade teacher Heidi Greer. Heidi had been out with an illness since Christmas break, and we learned that she passed over the break. I want to offer condolences to her family, to her current and former students and colleagues across the district. I also want to thank Mr. Papis at Alto and Vanessa Hogarth, Shannon Tundebold, members of our district crisis response team, and all the teachers and support staff at Alto who lifted each other up today, and were there to support our students as well as they came back to school. And just personally, remember Heidi's ability to light up a room with her smile and her positive energy, the love that she had for each of her students, and just remember her as a mentor and a leader and a friend across the district. So just wanted to offer that remembrance from Heidi. At the same time, it was an exciting day at the middle school. It was the first day for our middle school students to eat lunch in their new cafeteria. It just was really exciting to see the flow through the serving lines, to see the natural light, especially after the room with no light that they had been eating lunch in, the sound that it was great. They're still waiting for flooring to be installed over the summer. There'll be a sound system that'll be installed over the summer, projection system to make that space even more usable. But it was a good day in that regard. We talked about the signs at the high school and some of the delays. If you drove down Virgins, you noticed the new sign that's been installed along Virgins. The Alden Nash sign is slated to be scheduled at the end of this week. And then the electronics that go into the signs will be scheduled or installed the following week. I also wanted to follow up just about the complaint that we heard during public comment last month regarding the high school administration. And, you know, after that, Mr. Goff and the parent who was referenced during that comment sat down. They had a productive meeting with open lines of communication, which is what we hope for and what we expect, and when that happens, it works. I've talked to both. They both reported that the meeting was positive. The parent expressed that she was able to, you know, share her concerns and continue, you know, feels good about the working relationship that she has with the school, where she works to make sure that it's an inclusive environment for all kids and that students have a voice and feel respected. As far as the letters that were shared with the board, I just at this time didn't feel comfortable sharing who those letters came from. So those letters remain anonymous, but we have them for context. And you know, as through all this, we're going to continue to learn and grow. But I think it's an example of just when we promote a community that's based on respect, where we work with good lines of communications and collaboration, we can have good results with that. So, you know, at this time, I think that matter has been resolved. Also, you know, during this time, we've spent, you know, I spend a lot of time celebrating student success. We talked a lot about the athletics and the arts, but there have been some other clubs that have been working over the past couple months and want to recognize our esports team, which took first place at a contest in March that was promoted by the Michigan High School Esports League. Our robotics team, there was an article in the Lowell Ledger competing. They took third place at a competition, and that program continues to grow. They have great middle school participation. We're waiting to find out on their quest to qualify for their state level competition as well, but that program continues to do great. Our FFA program, once again, had excellent representation at the state convention, and they continue to just be, you know, it's a great opportunity for kids. Model UN, which traditionally took place in March, their meeting is coming up in April. Our Odyssey of the Mind program, they are continuing to work through their seasons as well, and just providing lots of opportunities for students in the arts, in athletics, but other curricular activities as well as the academic piece. Mr. Vandermeulen mentioned the assessments today. To our seniors who are here, enjoy your week without the assessments. Good luck on your upcoming AP exams. But you know, I just want to wish luck to all of our students as they take those tests. Those tests do not define you as students. They do not define us as educators, but they do give us good information about where we're headed. And it also provides opportunities for you as students, you know, as you look towards beyond high school as well. So just appreciate that, and also want to just also thank the board for your continued support. Thank you.
Next order of business, there will not be a motion to go into closed session as there are no updates to the contract at this point, so we will not need to move forward with that. Board communications will be in order. Mr. Nugent.
Yeah, just as Mr. Krajewski already talked about, I want to thank him and Mr. Shahaki for the work they did on the superintendent contract. That was something that we wanted to get done here this spring, and took us a few more months, maybe even than we thought it was going to, after we finished the evaluation in November and December. But the job of superintendent is a very challenging one, and it seems like more and more every year. And we have a superintendent who, in the time he's been here, has improved and has done a great job, and has shown out in the work that he does day to day and in the evaluations that we've done as a district or as a board. And so, Mr. Fowler, we were able to last year do some catch up with our teachers from some down contracts that we had in the past, and get some raises. We're looking at doing the same type of thing that hopefully we're working on wrapping up. I thought we'd find out more afterwards, but there's nothing to find out apparently, with our bus driver contract, and Mr. Fowler's contract really falls in line with that. sort of catching up and recognizing that we didn't give him much when he started, and we asked him to prove that he was doing the job, and he has, and we look forward to many more years with him in our district and leading us.
Thank you. Ms. Curtis. Stewart.
I had the opportunity to go to the career fair as well and present, and I was astounded by the questions and the attentiveness. There's some pretty classy students at Lowell High School, so just so you know, things are looking good. Also got a report today on how great the lunchroom was at the middle school. Mom, there's a garage door. So, thumbs up from a very happy sixth grader. And the one thing I thought when you mentioned the robotics, it's great that they did so well, but the other story that wasn't mentioned was how well they stood up and helped other teams. So we're raising kids that are not only doing excellent in robotics, but are looking out for other people and willing to help other teams. It's not all about winning or losing, it's about being good people, and that makes me super proud. The superintendent's contract, I appreciate the hard work. You don't know what goes into that as a newbie, see what goes into all of that. The research to find out that we're on par with other districts and not going to be the highest paid. We don't do it for prestige, we do it to keep quality people and make sure that we're compensating them for the hard work they're doing and the good job, so.
I would just like dovetailing off that, we have also tried over the past several years to make sure that all of our bargaining units are right in the middle of the county. We know we can't pay what Forest Hills can pay or what some other districts that are financially better off than we are, but we do want to in some way, you know, show you how much we appreciate the effort that goes into having a district like this. And so thank you for all the teachers and the staff and administrators that are sitting in the audience tonight, and for your efforts, because without you, the bus driver, the school, the lunch people, I know we've got at least one back there, and just that it's really appreciated. It's kind of an unsung job, you know. I mean, there is so much criticism of public schools nowadays, and kind of nitpicking kinds of things that really, as far as the big picture goes, you know, we need to deal with the big picture, and I think we're doing a good job of that. So, yeah, thank you for all the effort, and thank you, Jen, for you know, jumping in with both feet into the business of being a school board member and going out and talking to our career people as well. So. That's it. I would just add one thing, that and being a former literature teacher, the definition of literature in terms of like books, poetry, plays is different from the definition of just literature, as this is literature. Okay, a pamphlet that you hand out at a meeting of some type or an organizational kind of things is literature. So the person who is telling us that, you know, that we don't know our business in terms of quoting our policy, you don't have right. Thank you.
And I would like to just wrap up by stating that I can't believe we're on the back end of spring break. Before you know it, we'll be handing out a few diplomas coming up in roughly 6 weeks, or not even 5 weeks.
She knows somebody.
Yeah, how many days? So, you know, it's the year has flown by. We've been through a lot together. I couldn't imagine doing it with better people. So, thank you to my fellow board members, the administration, the teachers, the bus drivers, the lunch people. You all make this worthwhile sitting up here. So, thank you. With that, motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved.
Motion by Lori, support. Support by Jess. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We are adjourned. 12.
Always participate, Harry. Yeah. Nice job.
Oh, yeah.